you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Yes, sir. Something strange going on here. I tried the other number you gave me, the 3097 number, and I got a recording saying it was out of service. But I can't hear
I'm
you now.
sorry. I must have somehow given you the wrong number, but let me give you the right number because the connection will be way better.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay? Okay, 602.
Okay, that's it. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I got the
861. 861 is the middle, and then 3097.
All right, that was my fault. I got 620. I will call you right back.
Okay, good. Okay.
All right, that's better. My apologies there. Transposed the number. My fault, not yours. Bob Podaski is the author of a book called Flourish, and I've just started reading that, Bob. And
okay.
I already find it fascinating. You know, I have been searching for answers, looking for solutions, trying to understand the truth behind everything that's going on. Ever since I heard George Bush talk about the New World Order, how we can see a new world coming into view. And didn't feel right. And I've told people that I don't believe there's any such thing as a New World Order. The money changers Jesus ran out of the temple are still with us. They just changed the name of the temple. And you refer to this whole phenomena as Borg. The Borg. We're facing the Borg. Big banking business, organized religion, government borrowing.
Yeah.
Think you've got it nailed down pretty good now.
Well, thanks. Yeah, they're big parasites is what they are.
The few years back, I got a little tired of reporting on their methods. You know, it's and they've been using the same kind of methods throughout history, thousands of years, haven't they?
That's absolutely right. At least since 8,000 years ago, when government was invented in Sumer. Since then, it's been downhill.
And you threw organized religion in there. I've said I think the reason at the Council of Nicaea they promoted Jesus to the rank of God, so that men like you and I wouldn't aspire to be the kind of man he was. They didn't like just men running their money changers out of the temple, I guess.
Well, it's easier to be a king when you can convince people that kinghood is a gift of God, right?
Yes, sir.
You know, divine right of kings and all that. But it's just an excuse for one person to claim authority over another. And that becomes obvious when you study it. Let me tell you and your listeners a little bit about my background.
Please
I was
do.
a theoretical physicist working in systems analysis for both industry and government for quite a few years. And I got tired of the lifestyle and got retrained and became a psychotherapist. I had a private practice for 25 years. And during that time, I got interested in applying systems analysis to societal institutions. And I found out they're not that hard to analyze once you catch on to it. And the board that you talked about, the banks, organized religions, and government, they're the institutions people turn to solve societal problems. But they don't solve societal problems, they create them. And once you get that firmly in your head, everything else seems to fall into place. Would you agree?
Yes, sir, I would. My nickname, I started riding Harleys a long time ago. I had the nickname of the Loner because I just didn't like I don't follow, I don't, where are we going, boys? I'll meet you there and we'll have the beer on the bar when you get there. It's,
I like that.
And I discovered pretty early in my life that I couldn't be hypnotized. I tried. I volunteered. I went up on a stage, one of these shows that they were putting on, and the guy ran me off the stage.
That's interesting.
So it's well, I also talk about the number one mind control tool out there. You call it television, and they don't call it programming for nothing. That's a way they control the masses and get us to think in a certain way. Talking about the wealth and all that. I came up with different ways. I asked myself, how did we exist 2,000 years ago? Before television, before, any of these modern conveniences. My answer was the self-sufficient family farm being the basis of every civilization. And every time a communist regime, tyrannical regime, because I don't see, it's very hard for me to tell the difference between communism and fascism.
Right.
It's if you can grow your own food, generate your own power from everything God gave us, you don't really need these bankings, the bankers, the governments, or the politicians for much.
Yeah, okay. I totally agree. And I'd like to say a few more things about
Go right ahead, sir.
Some of the discoveries that I made along the way. I started asking 40 years ago, what has to happen for humanity to really thrive, to really flourish, do well, to succeed as a species? My analysis tells me that if we keep going in the direction we're going as a species, we're going to be extinct soon. Our society is run by parasites, and parasites have a way of killing the host, and themselves with it, of course, but they don't seem to know that ahead of time. So the question then became more poignantly, what has to happen? And I looked at lots and lots and lots of what seemed to be society's problems, specifically things like hunger and war and poverty and violence and addiction and all these things that seem to be, problems. And I found out that if you attack them one by one, you don't get anywhere. But they all have a common thread. These are really all symptoms of one big problem. And it's a simple problem. It's simply that our institutions consistently make unethical decisions. By institutions, I mean businesses, charities, government, you name it. If it's an organization and it's hierarchically organized, it will almost always make unethical decisions. So, I'm fortunate to meet a man who explained the ethics in a way that had previously. The man was John David Garcia, and he had for several years been doing research on ethics and creativity. And he had left a very, very lucrative business to go and do this. because in that business, he realized he was just making money. And ethically, that's trivial. It's what you do with the money that counts. And he took a chunk of that money and did this research for 20 years. And I spent 17 years with him before he died, continuing the research about ethics and people and what it takes to flourish. And one of the things we found out is that organizations, they really don't, even though most organizations have a list of things they call ethics, those are not actually ethics. Most people don't know what an ethic is. You know, I've been in talked before many groups, and I get everybody to agree that they understand what ethics are. And then I say, well, who can give me a good answer to the question, what is an ethic? And usually there's nobody there that can do that. So I'm going to take a moment here to just give you my elevator version of what is an ethic. It's just a combination of two things. A value that describes what it is you want more of or what you want to maximize. And a belief or belief system that tells you how to act or behave in order to get more of what it is you value. That's it. You take any pair of those things and you got an ethic. And as many people will point out, an ethic therefore can be quite arbitrary. And to some people that means that ethics are trivial because you can pick anything you want. You can decide you're valuing pancakes or flapjacks. And you might believe that you can get more of them if you behave a certain way. It doesn't mean, though, that the ethic is worth anything. Ethics can be valid or not valid. Invalid ethics. And valid ethic is one that, according to the belief system, you actually get more of what you value. And most so-called ethics don't do that. They're not valid. An example would be the Soviet Union. They had an ethic that was, the value was material well-being for everyone. The belief system was a tyrannical communist regime was supposed to give them what they valued. Well, it gave them almost universal poverty, which is just the opposite of what it set out to accomplish. That was not a valid ethic. And in this country, the people who founded the country set as their ethic freedom, at least for white male property owners. And what we got was every year except two since then, less freedom than the year before. And the two exceptions were 1865 when the emancipation of the slaves took place, and 1920 when women finally got to vote. So we have, again, an invalid ethic. Little wonder that our society doesn't work. In our case, the belief system was a republic form of government based on majority rule. So I began looking into why don't republics work? Jefferson seemed to know that. He's been quoted many times as saying things that indicated his suspicion about republics. And fact is, down through history, they've never lasted very long. So,
are you speaking of republics or democracies? I've heard that statement from our founding fathers. Benjamin Franklin referred to democracy as two wolves and a sheep don't know what's for dinner. That's the majority. That's the majority rule. And most of our politicians today, I mean, one of my favorite things to do when I was out and about and active, catch a politician in a park talking about our great democracy. Television cameras are following him. People are gathered around him, and I'd step up and I'd go, "Excuse me, sir, when did our republic become a democracy? Can you tell me what Congress was that?" And strange thing happened. The politician disappears, the cameras turn off, and everybody's standing around scratching their head, wondering what happened.
right. Well, still, I hear that, and I also know that I think it was Franklin who was asked when he left the signing of the Constitution. I think it was either he or Jefferson.
That was
A
Cosby.
woman asked him, "What did we get?" And he said something to the effect of, "A republic if we can keep it, madam."
Yes,
And
that
that was
Franklin.
a statement of uh, suspicion about the validity of republics in terms of doing the people the kind of good they were supposed to do. Anyway, to continue, looking into that, one of the things I observed was that every hierarchic organization eventually becomes bureaucratized. And by that I mean bureaucracy is the systematic elimination, destruction, or avoidance of corrective feedback. So if you avoid corrective feedback and discourage it, you wind up with a culture where everybody's covering their ass, nobody's doing anything creative, and a lot of unethical things begin happening because the head of such an organization doesn't know what the hands and feet are doing after a while, and more importantly, because the ethics gets driven out, the real ethics, the valid ethics, and one can, in fact, build a valid ethic around certain values. Not all values. Apparently, freedom doesn't work, but it's necessary. In order to have a thriving society, freedom is necessary but not sufficient. And the reason it's not sufficient is because when freedom is increased for everyone across the board, it's also increased for the psychopaths who want to control you and steal your wealth. And when their freedom is increased, it's working against you. So the trick becomes finding the right values. And it turns out that everything we really love in life comes from some kind of creativity. So you can start with creativity as the value and build a valid ethic. Or some of its logical equivalents like love, awareness, personal growth, personal evolution. These things are logical equivalents because when any one of them increases, they all increase. And if any one is diminished, they're all diminished. So there are a whole set of values that you can use to build a valid ethic. I talk about creativity most of the time, but you can work it just as well with love. Jesus did pretty well working with love. I don't think he said anything about hierarchies, though. Clearly, we have to replace hierarchies with something better. And I'm really jumping way ahead by saying that because there's so much that one can understand about the dynamics by which evil creeps into our world. And I just jumped over a big piece of it, but that's given our time frame that'll have to do. But anyway, so you can build an ethic on creativity, for example. And one way to do it is to say that your belief system is that an act is ethical if that act increases creativity for at least one person, including the person acting, without limiting or diminishing creativity for anyone. And you could substitute love or awareness or objective truths, personal evolution for the word creativity, and you'll get the same results, logically equivalent. That ethic is valid. It works. It works beautifully. And so John David Garcia and I began in 1985 looking for ways to implement that. We had the ethic. We knew it was valid. And we began looking at maximizing creativity under that belief system. And we performed experiments with groups, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, up to 20 people. And we found out as we plotted the amount of creativity evident in those groups, there was a peak at 8 people. 7 and 9 was almost as good. Below 7 and above 9, the creativity dropped off sharply. So we were able to optimize the size of the group. And then we experimented with different balances between men and women in the group. And we found out it works best, again, peaks with equal numbers of men and women, almost as good if there's one more man than there is women, and vice versa. Drops off in creativity pretty steeply after you go beyond those limits. So now we had a formula for an ethical society, a group of people, typically 8, which I've come to call them octologues. It's like a dialogue only for 8 people. You get 8 people together who have a commitment to make ethical decisions, who understand the ethics, who understand the logical consequences of that ethic, because we could spend a whole day just exploring the logical consequences in terms of the principles that come out of that. And I do that in workshops. I'm teaching people. We spend a whole day working on the ethics and the logical consequences of what I just told you.
I like the sound of that, the octologues, as opposed to the pentagram or the Star of David. You know, it has a rather good feel to it. I've said one of the biggest problems we've got is how do you fight evil without becoming evil? I mean, that's what I see when you're talking about the ethics here. You know,
right.
I won't answer, but it don't involve going over and killing a bunch of people by calling them names and being demonized. There was no Gulf of Tonkin incident. There was no reason to kill a bunch of gooks that were simply farmers trying to protect their land.
Right.
We became the evil that we were supposedly over there fighting. I mean, I thought it was a good thing to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yeah.
But it's not done by war.
No. War is never ethical, ever. Every war has been fought over possession of resources. There's never been another real reason for war.
Excellent. That's exactly a wonderful description for me for the whole war on drugs thing. They want to control the plants that and they do that by making them illegal and then trying to put you in prison for having them.
Yeah, that's one of many examples, and you're absolutely right. Whatever the resource is, whether it's minerals in the earth, gas, oil, seaports, slaves, it's all every war has been fought for control of resources. And what this ignores is the fact that when people cooperate, there's a synergistic effect, and much more resources get created. One of the fundamental lies that we're told is that human society is a zero-sum game, that for someone to gain something, someone else has to lose it. And that's just not true. There are many, many examples of things that people can do together where everybody wins. And that's been one of my criteria for the direction I've lived my life. So anyway, to continue, we found out that groups of 8, in order to be effective, to do really well, have to agree that their decisions will always be unanimous, that a group decision doesn't count unless it's unanimous. That means no more majority rule, no more 51 people controlling 49. And that makes a huge difference in people's attitude. And so if such a group with some training in communication skills to get unanimous decisions easily, which again, that kind of training is available, with that kind of training, and if they have an ethical purpose, there's hardly any limit to what they can do. It's just amazing what such groups are capable of. And there's a bunch of them forming now, and they're doing really well. And I've been honored to be the person teaching this stuff, because I'm the guy that kept on going with this after John David Garcia died in 2001. And since then, I've been teaching the skills necessary to make this technology work. And it's fun, and it's exciting. And it results in organizations that are flat. There's no bottom up or top down. It's flat. Everyone has an equal say in what takes place. Because in a group of 8, if someone proposes an unethical course of action, there's always someone in the group that'll say, wait, no, we're not going to do that. That's unethical. And you discuss it until you're sure whether it is or isn't unethical. And you act accordingly. And only when you have unanimity, you have a group decision. So it's a really good method for that. And of course, for bigger projects where more than 8 people are required, you just spin off another octalog, form an ethical contract between the 2 octalogs, and now you've got a bigger kind of organization that I call a holomat. So holomats of octalogs can be really big. There's no limit to how big they can be. You could have billions of people belonging to one holomat, and lots of people belonging to more than one octalog. So we began experimenting with this technology and have yet to find any reason or any circumstance under which it doesn't work. And there's a lot of evidence that it does work, and we're proving it out there every day. To give you some examples, not of specifically octalog-based mentality, but think about the Gore-Tex company. They have no hierarchy. Nobody is anybody else's boss. The founder of Gore-Tex, a fellow named Gore, he carries a business card that doesn't even name him as the founder. He's just an associate. And they've been one of the most successful businesses in the history of business. They have a lot of products, tens of thousands of people working in that organization. No bosses. They use the principles and the ethics without using the octalog. Though I'm sure that many of their groups are very close to optimal size. They have groups within groups and small group decisions that affect the entire operation. And it's working beautifully. They've never had a bad year. They've never had a losing year financially. And there are a few other examples of big companies that work this way.
Now, this is very close to, you mentioned I don't know if you used the name, they used to call it the ton. That was 10 people working together to form the government of a town, of a community,
right.
and it's also pretty close to. I've said that we can solve most of our problems, not with 1,000 people, but with 12 and with an honest judge.
the principle of tens goes back to the Israelites 2,500 years ago. And they did have a successful system. It's unfortunate that it was, as I understand it, some of the more barbaric neighbors invaded and conquered them. That goes on a lot.
Yeah, some of us escaped, went across the Caucasus Mountains, turned left, and they started calling us Caucasians and Germans.
Right. Right. Yeah. Anyway, so the idea, the core idea, is everyone learns the ethics and replaces hierarchies with polemats of octalogues. That's our core strategy, and I call that process by which we're spreading the word the Titania Project. People can learn about it by going to titanians.org. That's Titanians, titanians.org.
Those are all linked. Those sites are linked along with information on your book, Flourish. Is all
right.
all up on my website and will remain up there. I like the idea that what they have done so much to us, Bob, is change the language. You know, that's not a hunting rifle now. That's an assault rifle because it's got an extra bullet in it. It's and even the whole term Jew, I almost don't like to use the term anymore because it's been co-opted. It's been radicalized. It's been changed. And, you know, and of course the Bible warned us about that. The Jews who say they're Jews but are not, are of the synagogue of Satan. So, you know, even to use the term Jew in relation to Israel or in relation to the Bolsheviks or in relation to the neocons gives them more power than they deserve. Right. By instead of calling this a militia, you call it the octagon. You call it the holomat. You've changed the language on them, and you can really use that effectively, I think.
That's true. Consider this, okay? Look at the typical person who's in the middle of a hierarchy. He's got a boss that tells him what to do, where to do it, when to do it, how to do it, what to wear while he's doing it, whether he can take a potty break, and by controlling his income, what kind of clothes he wears, what kind of house he lives in, what kind of car he drives, what kind of schools his kids go to, and so on. Okay, most people, at least 80% of people in that situation, hate their jobs because they hate the boss. They hate being told what to do. Now, consider what such a person who's creative would like to do. Consider that available could be a similar task job, but where he'd be a partner, he'd share in the profits, he'd be an equal to everyone else in the company. He would have as much say in what took place as anyone else. He'd be free to agree or not to agree to do whatever the rest of the group wanted. He could steer his part of the business, and the people he'd be working with would come to be trusted friends that he could confide in and care about and relate to. Which job do you think that person would choose? The hierarchic job, where the only privilege he has is to boss someone else around? Or to join the octalogue, where he gets to be his own boss? I don't think there's much debate necessary to decide that once people realize they have that choice, the better people, the more ethical people, the more creative people are going to go with the octalogue. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I would agree with that because basically that's what I've always done. You know, I've always had my own company. One of the ones I started about 40 years ago, I went to the bank and the banker said, well, who's going to be the president? I said, well, he is. This guy over here, this friend of mine over here. And they said, why are you letting him be president? And I said, I've been president a lot of times. I thought he needed the experience.
Yeah.
And I always felt if somebody wanted to take over my job, wanted to do my job, I'd be happy to let him. If he
Of
can do it
course.
better than I can, if he can do my job or play this role better than I can, why wouldn't I let him have it? If it's good for
Exactly.
me and my children, it should be good for you and your children. I mean, that to me, that's a guide rule. And I've missed out on jobs because my IQ, or I would try to get on a general dynamics once right after I got out of the army, and kid sitting next to me was bragging that he made 40% on his GED. I made 93%. He got the job, I didn't.
That's funny. That is funny. Yeah. Well, goes to show you about jobs. It's part of the, part of the way the world is built. Hierarchies serve the cartels, and the cartels. I should say a word about cartels because I've studied cartels. A cartel is a shared monopoly, and cartels exist only for two purposes: maximize the profits of their members and to maintain that monopoly in that industry, whatever it happens to be. And so every time you buy, every time you get into a job or profession, you need a license. And there are requirements to be met, of course, to get a license, costs involved. That organization that controls that is a cartel. So all of the so-called professions are run by cartels, and they are one of the most damaging things in our society. And
You
of
think
course,
most people would think of the drug cartels, but the drug
right,
cartels are the CIA, the Mossad. I've documented the whole Operation Watchtower, ran concurrently with Iran Contra. You know, the
yeah,
George Bush was covering for the Mossad. Israel was bringing all of the ecstasy in. They brought all the cocaine into George Bush's partner, Manuel Noriega. Shipped it
uh,
to George Bush's other partner, who was the governor of Arkansas, and had to keep the state boys clear from Mena, Arkansas. And they brought the drugs in and then put your children, my friends, me in jail for having a little bit of plant, a piece of a product that used to be readily accessible in America.
right. That's a good example. Drug cartels, oil cartels.
Oil cartels,
How,
yes, sir.
how about how about power cartels? A
Absolutely.
group of people.
They have gone after people and tried to kill people or imprison people that cut down their profits. People like Paul Pantone, he developed the Geet carburetor, doubled your gas mileage,
Uh-huh.
and he was put in an insane asylum for 3 years. It took us 3.5 years to get him out.
uh, well, the power cartels, when you have a group of people who assume that they have a right to be the top bosses of everyone else, and then they broker their power. Okay, for example, a king might say to someone, how would you like to be my tax collector? I'll provide the police or the army. You go collect taxes and bring them back to me, and you get to keep a share. That's power brokerage. It's an industry, and a cartel in the power brokerage industry is called a government. That's the nature of government. Power brokerage cartels are the things that we call government. And it's very, very unethical.
Now,
And
let's talk about that for a moment because my idea, my solution here, it goes against the thought processes of most Americans who want to keep throwing their children and their friends and their relatives in jail, in prison, in private prisons for something they got in their pocket. And to me,
Right.
I would say take something out of Reagan's playbook and say, Mr. Obama, tear down that wall between us and Mexico, replace it with tables, abolish all the laws against victimless crimes. If there ain't a victim, there ain't a crime here.
I
And
agree. I
and
agree with that totally.
let the Peruvians and the Colombians and all those people that have had their incomes destroyed by NAFTA, by Monsanto, by Archer Daniels Midland, let them bring all their products up. Let them bring their cocaine up. Let them bring their heroin up. Let them bring their pot up. Lay it on that table. Pay a duty on it.
Hey, wait. How do you collect a duty? Doesn't that require appreciation first?
Okay, give me a better solution.
I say give them all those freedoms, or allow them all those freedoms which they're really entitled to. Don't tax them. Taxation is a form of slavery. If you've got an organization that thinks it has the right to from obligations and other under threat of violence, force, jail, etc., by means of coercion, you're looking at an evil operation.
Well, isn't that what's happening right now with the whole medical marijuana industry? I mean, these doctors, as far as I'm concerned, the doctors are the real drug dealers. And you know, I've been I've had people say, well, Clay, is marijuana a gateway drug? Oh, absolutely. If you got to go to a drug dealer to buy it, if you can grow it in your backyard and trade it to your neighbor.
If you're going to talk gateway stuff, I think that wearing diapers is a gateway to everything terrible. Who do you know that's committed terrible crimes that wasn't at one time in diapers?
Right.
We ought to outlaw diapers. Oh my, make them illegal. No. Let people be free, really free. Stop taxing them. That's a form of slavery. And stop harassing them and stop threatening them with violence. And you'll be amazed at the things people will do creatively, productively.
I wrote books about this. I wrote a science fiction book about this 45 years ago when a person showed up on the scene, a charismatic person showed up on the scene, and got all the laws against victimless crimes abolished. So in 46 states, you could buy anything you want. You could do anything you wanted. You could, as long as you didn't hurt someone else,
right?
Then you could do anything you wanted. And 6 states or 4 states kept the same laws they got today. Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Mississippi kept the same laws. All the Christians moved to those states so they can be protected and
from each other.
That's insanity to me.
Yes. And to me, especially having spent many years studying the dynamics of institutions and seeing what the real results are, and seeing that real freedom leads to all the creative benefits we want. And yeah, there are still going to be some difficulties of transition. But you don't want to hear, okay? One of the things that we've learned in recent years, and this has been researched quite scientifically, is that every person who ever initiates violence against someone else, in other words, whether it's pulling a trigger or flashing a badge, exerting power over others, every person who ever does that in any circumstance was at one time abused. Abused is the cause of violence. Part of what we learn to do is to raise our children without violence. That means we don't spank them, we don't hit them, we don't beat them up, we don't verbally abuse them. When we want to change their behavior, we negotiate. We treat them as we would another adult. We talk it over. We get them to agree. Sometimes their lives hang in the balance because we want them to agree to things like not going out in the street when there's traffic. But the fact is, there are people now raising their children this way, and the children are magnificent. They don't have the urges toward violence that other people have. And by the way, what is the most violent, earliest thing that happens to many, 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 many children? Well, in the case of boys in particular, it's circumcision. Okay, an infant feels pain everywhere. They don't localize it. And circumcision removes almost half the mass of an infant's penis. It is horrendous. Now, most people don't remember it because it's horrendous. I happen to have had a lot of therapy, and I remember vividly. It has all kinds of repercussions needed within our society. We will not have a violence-free society until we've done that. It's absolutely essential that we stop attacking our children. So part of what my organization, this Titania organization, is beginning to do is to teach parenting, to teach nonviolent parenting, so that people who are parents and people who are expecting to be parents can learn how to raise children without building violence into their personalities by doing things that are abusive. Now, for some people, that's a very, what's the word for it? It's controversial. Oh, well, I had it done to me, so it couldn't have been that bad. Well, if you had it done to you, it warped you. It warps everyone that goes through that. Okay, genital, what's the word for it? When someone is torn up, literally, physically torn up, mutilated is the word. Genital mutilation, whether it be in boys or girls, and there are societies that do it to girls, it's horrendous. It is the cause of all the violence in our society. We stop doing that, and the violence will go away. So we got to start teaching that.
I couldn't do that to my boys. I had two sons, and I couldn't do it to them. I didn't do it to them. They've turned out to be fairly well adjusted.
Your instincts are good. Okay. The fact is that little bit of violence that is, I was 8 days old when that was done to me. I was strapped down to a metal table with a wide strap that covered my whole torso, and cranked tight with a ratchet. And then this man who was wearing a mask, well, surgical mask, of course, approached, and suddenly my whole body was on fire. On fire, it felt like. And I was screaming and screaming in pain. And I remember that vividly because I was able to recover that memory that I had so deeply tucked away through my therapy. Therapy is a really good thing when it's done well. And that was one of the benefits I got, is remembering that and realizing that I knew the guy behind the mask was a man. And so for more than 30 years, I never trusted a male. I never trusted a man. Couldn't, because of what that first one did to me. Okay, that was where I managed to get over that because I could remember it, and I actually began trusting men and having male friends. Okay, that's a really important part of a man's life, is having male friends. For me, that was impossible until I restored that memory and understood why I didn't trust men. And I'll bet you there's a lot more men out there who went through the same thing as a result who benefited from awareness. So,
now, I do have to. There's one part of your career here I'd like to talk about because I had personally been involved with it. Some friends of mine in San Antonio got into transactional analysis 30 some odd years ago, and I got invited to one of their parties and got to meet a lot of psychologists.
Okay.
And they were the most insane
people. Psychologists are as messed up a group as anyone.
They were the most insane people I've ever met. I mean, I had one of them sitting there talking to me and saying, "Yeah, I had one of my patients came in today and thanked me, said I'd cured her, and it took the whole session for me to convince her she wasn't ready yet." And I kind of picked him up by his shirt and I said, "You spent the whole session convincing her she was still sick so you could keep taking money from her. You better get you better get out of my sight and out of my arm's reach right now."
There you go. It was good. You understand, the vast majority of therapists learn their craft in schools, in academic environments. I didn't, because the academic environment is another cartel environment, and the people who are running that particular cartel, the psychology cartel, if you want to call it that, they don't want competition, and therefore they discourage creativity. They discourage the very thing that is what we really value. They don't want people being creative and coming up with better ways of doing therapy. They want people to learn their way of doing therapy. And because of that, and because of the fact that most of them have not experienced much therapy themselves, or at least not very good, not much good therapy, because there is good therapy and bad therapy. The number one requirement for a therapist to be really, really good is that he's done lots and lots and lots of work on himself. Because your therapist is taking you into hostile territory, and you can't take someone somewhere that you're afraid to go. You've got to have worked through those issues yourself. And if you haven't, you're just playing at being a therapist, not really being one. So that was something I learned early on. I learned 5 different methods of therapy, and then along the way, I started combining them. And they work very well in combination when you understand what each of them is and how each of them has advantages over all the others. That's a very effective kind of therapy, but most people aren't willing to pay the price in the number of hours of therapy they have. I was in therapy for 10 years, and I'm proud of it because it made me a really good therapist, made me very effective in helping people. But most people don't do that. They go to school for 4 years and they think they learn it all, and then they go out and practice and mess people up. So you need to be selective about who you make your therapist. Anyway, we've got a few minutes left. And,
actually, we've got a commercial break coming up here in about 2 minutes, and then we've got a whole hour left. And
another hour, fantastic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got 2 hours here, and I have to tell you, I'm really enjoying the conversation. I think you've got concepts that could work, that can work. I've said trying to organize patriots, and I've had a lot of the people that recommend your book on my show in this last week.
Cool.
Clyde Campbell was just on my show a few days back, and Jeff Bayer from Liberty Zone, he's working in counties, and I've said that's really where we need to start, in our towns and our counties. We got Liberty Villages. Right. We got Liberty Villages around this country that have been here for 100 years. They call them small town America. And, we were here, we had these little towns with our shops in them, and surrounding them, we got farms, we got ranches.
Right.
Making our food. And all we got to do is use the technology. And we've had the technology, Bob, to make this a wonderful world to live in, from Tesla on and possibly even way before Tesla. I mean, I'm kind of the belief that we've been able to visit other planets and stars 10,000 years ago. And maybe the civilizations in Sumer and Egypt are just the remnants of a worldwide civilization that had access to space. We call them UFOs today, I guess.
Right. Well, I've read it. I have all along given a lot of credibility to the notion of our being in touch with extraterrestrials. I think it's highly likely. I'm not one of those people that goes around and says, could be. And I'm still concerned about the lack of...
Discover what's really going on in the world that mainstream media won't tell you. At Truth Radio, you can listen live or listen to a large selection of archived programs. TruthRadio.com. The truth is out there.
Just one of the networks that we're broadcasting on. And go ahead, Bob.
I'm just saying that I think it likely that we've been in touch with extraterrestrials. I've seen some of the artwork that was in Central and South America that showed figures that sure looked like people in spacesuits.
I think more of an important question here is, how did they build these pyramids and these cities using rocks we can't lift today? How did they do that? That was using a technology far beyond anything we've got today.
Yeah, lifting them is just a piece of it, but cutting them, shaping them, making them regular, and then putting them in place, lifting them, putting them in place. I agree that this is a pretty amazing technology that we don't have today. And obviously existed here at one time, so there must have been very high levels of technology available, and something happened. It went away, for the most part. So yeah, there's a lot of evidence to that effect. I don't usually spend a lot of time and energy focused on that, but my friend Foster Gamble, takes it very seriously. Do you know Foster?
I haven't met him yet. I'm looking forward to speaking with him. I'd like to have him on my show. I like what he's done with Thrive, and he is fortunate enough to be in the position to be able to get this out there. I mean, his family's got money, and he's got money, and he's telling the truth. He's not working for the banks or the pharmaceutical companies or big ag.
Yeah, his family wanted him to go that route, the political route, and he turned around and went 180 degrees the opposite direction. And here's the interesting thing, to me anyway, one of the interesting things is that the working title of my book, Flourish, was originally Thrive. And about 2 weeks before my book was to come out, Foster came out with a movie, Thrive. And I didn't want to be seen as coattailing him. So I changed my title to Flourish. But he and I are very much in alignment in terms of our values, our ethics, what we want to see happen. He's being very supportive of that. And I'm fortunate to count him as a friend. There's a website There are links, by the way, from his website to ours, to titanians.org. And there's another website called Flourish Fairfield. I think it's .org. And it's a group of people in Fairfield, Iowa, who are promoting the Flourish concept and the Titania project. And if you go to that website, you'll see a bunch of stuff there, including a clip of Foster talking with, appearing basically at one of our open presentations in Fairfield. And he's excited about what we're doing. And we're going to be working more and more closely with him as time goes on, because his ethic is a valid ethic. And basically, we are a group that will not do business with people that we see as unethical. You know, that would be like nurturing parasites. Right? It's unethical to nurture parasites. I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yes,
right?
sir. I just saw one of my other guests, and I believe he's responsible for referring me to you, Carl Swinson.
Oh,
You know Carl Swinson?
I don't know him yet.
Okay.
I'd like to.
And we've got he'll be on my show on a regular basis.
Oh, cool. Cool.
It's what they've done to me, Bob. I mean, I was reaching a lot of people. 10,000 people for one of my magazines, 10,000 people in another one of my magazines. And then suddenly I had an accident and everything, my whole life dissolved. Kept me
How
out
did
of
that
time.
come about?
Well, I had started the Thunder Riders magazine in Phoenix in Arizona Thunder Riders magazine. Nothing to do with politics, just good-looking women, good-looking motorcycles. And all of the
That's where I live, by the way.
Huh?
That's where I live, by the way, Phoenix.
Yeah, well, it was good. I was working with Hacienda Harley Davidson and all of the other motorcycle dealers, and I was publishing the Free American, which I've done since 1994. I started the militias in New Mexico in the governor's office, no terrorist organization there. Governor Gary Johnson, good libertarian, helped, we worked we formed the militias, I trained them, and the governor could call us up at any time. Then they blew up Oklahoma City, and when they did 9/11, I put building number 7 on the cover of Free American magazine, which was nationally distributed. Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. And I put Larry Silverstein's quote, and I referred to it on the air as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning. And May, that was April issue. And May, the story broke in New York Times about the NSA being able to tap everybody's phones. George Bush allowed the NSA to tap everybody's phones, but the NSA didn't tap anybody's phones. They farmed it out to 2 companies, Amdocs and Converse, 2 Israeli companies, to tap our phones. On May 20th, I called home and asked my son, "Where do you need me to go next, son?" "Where are you, Dad?" "I'm on the north side of Phoenix, Shaker Skin Tattoo Parlor." "Oh, go down 24th Street to McDowell, turn left, go to the wheel shop. It's right there, Dad." "Okay, son, see you later." 2 blocks before I got to McDowell, I got hit by a woman in a borrowed car with no insurance. Hit hard enough to roll a Road King over me sideways 3 times. Hit my head against the curb. They rushed me to the hospital and kept me drugged for 3 months for 3 broken ribs. Ran up a $750,000 hospital bill. Got no memory of 3 hospitals. When they finally took me off the drugs, I was up walking and talking and doing just fine, thank
you. Yeah.
And after that, they stayed on me. I had one of my magazines sold, the motorcycle magazine. I had it sold to a publicly traded company, $500,000. We signed the papers on Thursday. I went into the office. They put a press release out on Friday. I walked into the office on Monday. The CEO's white and chicken. I can't go through with it. I can't go through with it, Clay. They're threatening to impeach me. They've contacted every stockholder in the company to tell them what a right-wing radical anti-Semite you are. And that was 10 years ago. It's taken me 10 years now to get the Free American back out as an online magazine. I kept the radio show going, or got it going, as soon as I was able to regain consciousness again. And, they wanted me to take medication. I refused to do that. I said the only medication I need is a joint and a Harley. That's all I'll ever do. You'll never get me on Halcyon, Haldol, Valium, or morphine again. I won't take it.
Right.
And so it's been basically at war ever since. I've been publishing and writing and broadcasting for well over 40 years, and I've never been sued for libel or slander. Ever. I get my facts right. I'm a good reporter.
Yeah, I believe it. So, something I'm curious about is, what are your plans? Something I'm curious about is, what are your plans? What's next that you want to accomplish?
Well, I still think the Liberty Village concept is feasible. People used to tell me, the way I originally envisioned it, because I had 5 acres out in the middle of nowhere, but it was in the middle of a bunch of ranches. The ranchers were my friends, so I had cattle, range-fed cattle, not feedlot cattle.
Yeah.
And I had a garden, and I had a windmill, and I had solar, and I figured that made me pretty self-sufficient. But everybody said, wow, we can't move to the country. We can't we got jobs. We got to work. We got to have a job. Well, where did that neighborhood you live in come from? Oh, yeah, a farm or a ranch. Why not grow food in your backyard, put solar and wind on your roof, and then you can turn your city block into a Liberty Village.
I like that.
And you do it with in the same manner that you're talking about. 8 people.
Right.
We only need 8 people in this block to do this. And you other guys, you don't want to do that. You don't want to invest in solar. You don't want to invest in wind. You don't want to invest in a geek carburetor. You don't want to put a generator in your garage that doesn't emit any carbon monoxide. You don't have to. Don't need to force nobody. But if you want to do this, we've got a co-op here. And we work with the farmers in the country. All you got to do is meet the demands of the co-op, and that's grow organic, no genetically modified crap, corn that rats won't eat, and they want you to feed it to your children. I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting, and I'm glad that you can see how the non-hierarchic method of organizing can be a really powerful tool.
Well, you're equal to your neighbor. You already need 8 neighbors. 8 neighbors in a square block, and you can turn. What can you build in your garage? Can you build a windmill? Can you build one of those nice, pretty round windmills that don't kill any eagles? I said the Obama's idea, government's idea of greening America is to rent the top of that mountain out to a Chinese firm, lease it to a Chinese firm so they can bring their windmills in. They take the power the windmills generate, run it back down to the power company, and then the power company sells it to you. They may have to charge you more for green energy. Why not just cut out the middleman? Why not just, God gave you the wind, God gave you the sun, you've got the human minds created the technology, harvest it in your own home. You don't need to bring the power companies in there. You can put a plastic pipe around your house, around your yard, and fill it with water, put a solar pump on it, and you can grow algae. The algae, you can make diesel.
Right.
We can be self-sufficient.
Lots of possibilities. Once you start applying the creativity that you were born with, there's no end to what you can do to benefit yourself and your friends and neighbors. And, I really applaud what you're doing. I think it's a righteous approach to life. And if everyone was doing similar kind of stuff, we wouldn't have these problems. To me, the thing that I keep coming back to is, in order to have a society that accepts these values and beliefs, you got to do away with child abuse. You got to do away with the things that turn innocent, wonderful, innocent children into the monsters that we see around us these days. Because otherwise, if we keep making monsters, we're going to wind up, all of us, dead. The whole human race will become extinct, and I don't want that to happen. Not that I'll be around to see the end of it, but
Hollywood's always good about showing you what's to come. The whole rash of zombie movies is I find to be pretty interesting. It's kind of like having the X-Files, the extension of the X-Files, featuring a show as their pilot show, featuring a show about an airliner flying into the World Trade Center.
Right.
Matter of fact, I envisioned something like that by when one of my fictional characters who possessed a little extraordinary type of ESP got a hold of some directors in Hollywood, some producers in Hollywood, and made movies about abolishing all the laws against victimless crimes, which led to the election of a president and the cleaning out of Congress, and led to the free states of America, 46 states that abolished all laws against victimless crimes. It was science fiction 45 years ago, but it's getting closer to reality now. The medical marijuana, I'm certainly not a fan of medical marijuana. Why should I pay a doctor for a prescription for something God gave me? And
right. Totally agree. I do have a concern that I will share with you about expecting government to solve the problem by changing. I have a lot of friends who are what I call infiltrators. I see people who recognize the problem that we have as falling into two big groups. One I call the fixers, people who want to fix government, and there seem to be only two ways to fix government. One is by election, by voting, and the other is by becoming government, infiltrating. And the other group of people I call the replacers, who've given up on fixing government, and they want to replace it with something entirely different, something that isn't government, that serves the interests of the people. And I see myself in the latter camp, that I don't think government is fixable, But I do think that the effort to fix government may be necessary, not sufficient, but necessary to bring about the transformation where we wind up with something really different than government. We wind up with self-governance and holoman's of afterlife, or something comparable. So I would say let's us replacers and fixers get together and collaborate. And what that means to me is that all the people who are the constitutionalists, or the Constitution, who want to law, in the long term, such things are tough. I said, let's go ahead and support with a port system built as a whole map, so that people who are in there valued to change government for the better have a whole support system working for them that in those difficult circumstances where they're surrounded by statists that want to enslave their neighbors and they want to free their neighbors. Being in that situation is very frustrating and difficult, and we need to support those people, and the way to do it is have them join a holomat and be in touch with each other within their octologs. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. I'm not sure what category I fit in here, because I tried to do it by the book. I worked with a wealthy gentleman from Forsyth, Georgia. His name was Charles Collins. Charles was the first Republican to sign up for the president race in 1994. And I went with him. I traveled with him from Maine to California, all of the Republican caucuses. Hung out with Bob Dole and Pat Buchanan and Alan Keyes. Arlen Specter didn't like me much. Every time he got up to speak, I'd walk down the aisle and say, Arlen, tell us about that magic bullet, Arlen. So he didn't like me much. But every time Charles Collins got up to speak, every cameraman on stage turned the cameras off and pointed them at the ground. In 2 states, in Maine and Michigan, they turned his microphones off. They unplugged his microphone so nobody could hear him tell people we could remove the Federal Reserve the same way Kennedy did with Executive Order 1110. And I had to be the one to tell Charles, what are you going to do? You're not going to win. Nobody knows who you are. They removed the signs. I'd put up the signs the night before, Collins for president. By morning, I get into the hall and they'd be gone. All of them gone.
Wow.
So, trying to work within the government, work within the Republican Party, just didn't work. Wasn't practical, because the media...
Let me jump in here and give you my take on that situation, because, many of us, myself included, and Clyde Cleveland and lots of other people, really good people, have spent years and years of their lives trying to fix the government from within. And I used to do that. I believed in government at one time. I believed it was a good thing and it could be made a little better, But as time went on, I began to, and especially once I started applying some of these systems analysis techniques to looking at government as a phenomenon, and I realized that the parties, the political parties, are basically different flavors of the same phenomenon. These people think they have a right to take other people's resources away by force and use them to meet their own desires. That fact makes them logically equivalent in terms of their impact on society. There is no meaningful difference between Democrats, Republicans, and others who, like even libertarians who want to get elected to change the government for something good. It's not going to happen. The government's like a robot. It's owned by the big firms, and it has built into it safeguards against other people controlling the outcomes. So yes, we're allowed to elect a new person here or there to replace another person here or there within the structure of the government. But as soon as someone in government starts acting up, acting out, doing something different, something that's not in the interests of the government's owners, like a robot, government strikes back, and it will marginalize and trivialize the individual who seeks to make change. And if that isn't sufficient, it will kick them out. And if that isn't sufficient, they'll kill them. Did you know that in the last 100 years, governments around the world have killed 300 million of their own people?
Yes, sir. I am aware of that. I've often speculated that perhaps.
So,
go ahead.
These robot governments will compunction about killing any number of people in order for them to maintain their control. So I now see politics as what I call pageantry. It's just like the feudal lords of the past invite the peasants into the castle grounds and entertain them one day a year. They give them booze, they give them sex, they give them rewards of various kinds, they treat them nicely, and they basically pretend that they care about them. Pageantry, this is my word, this is my use of the word pageantry. And I think it's pretty accurate in terms of governments don't care about us. We're the enemy. We're the cattle. And just because we think we have a choice doesn't mean we really do. I mean, what's the difference, as you pointed out, between fascism and communism? They're two flavors of the same phenomenon.
The way I refer to it is two wings of the same bird, and the bird's a global vulture. It ain't an eagle.
There you go.
And one of the things that really turns me off, really upsets me, is that last year, the last presidential election, first of all, you didn't have any choice in president, whether you had McCain or Obama or Clear Channel's Mitt Romney. We donated $1 billion to the Republicans or the Democrats or both. And where did that money go? Oh, it went to pay for those Super Bowl commercials for Mitt Romney or Barack Obama or some other controlled candidate, and you didn't know about Gary Johnson running for president. You didn't know.
Right. The money goes to keeping the status quo. And the people who own the system, who own the robot that we call government, they don't care which party is in power because they're being in the real power, regardless of who gets elected. If any one of those candidates had been elected other than Obama, we'd have the same situation, just a little different flavor. Same situation, basically. Okay? What everyone has to come to understand is that as soon as I claim to have authority over you, the right to tell you what to do and the right to don't say that, I'm being evil. I'm doing something evil. I'm doing something wrong and unethical. And people don't easily understand that because in our schools, in our mass media, we celebrate power. We celebrate one group of people having power over another group of people. We're taught to do that from the time we're very small, and we're susceptible to it because we get treated badly when we're infants. We're susceptible because of the horrendous things that happened to us before we're 5 years old. It's really, really important that we learn to recognize these early injustices that take place in the family and teach families how to avoid doing such things to their kids. It's not an easy task. It can be done. I call the process of correcting that soul bonding. And I call it that because it's something that is necessary in order for people to really connect with each other emotionally at any age, as children, as infants, as teenagers, as young adults, and as older adults. At every stage of our lives, we're faced with choices about how to respond to one another, and most of the time, our choices are automatic, based on things that happened before we were 5 that we can't even remember. Why do you think we can't remember them? We can't remember them because they're too painful to remember. We wouldn't have survived our childhood if we remembered all the bad things that were done to us by well-meaning parents, by parents who followed the book. When I was a kid, when I was an infant, there was a book that was popular among parents that said, if your child cries because he's hungry, don't feed him. Don't pick him up and feed him. Feed him on a schedule. Otherwise, he's going to rule your life. And guess what? That's not good advice. Okay? If a child comes into the world hungry all the time, that's neglect, a form of abuse. And it warps the mentality of people when that happens. They think the world is full of scarcity, and it makes people intimidated and frightened and morally weak for a variety of reasons. This is one of 5 different ways that we're traumatized as infants and small children. And if we don't get over that as a species, we're going to be extinct. We've got to outgrow that. And we know enough now. We have enough information to teach people how to avoid traumatizing our infants and small children. Why don't we do it? Well, because we don't know about it. Okay, let's learn about it. And so this process that I call soul bonding is different for people at different ages, but the basic thing is to heal those early emotional wounds in order to have a flourishing adult life. You know, I was married for 38 years, and this was during the same period at being and for the first 6 years, my wife and I fought like hell. But the thing that made it different than it was for most people was we weren't fighting to win over one another. We very quickly learned to fight for closeness, connection, intimacy, real intimacy. And once we learned how to do that, and it took us a while to figure that one out, but once we learned how to do it, that's going. And life was really, really wonderful until my wife got Alzheimer's, and I became the caregiver, you know, over the almost 10-year period that she was dying. That wasn't so wonderful, but I felt fine about being the caregiver and surviving as a caregiver because of that foundation we'd laid of working to whether heal those early wounds. This is something I recommend to people. You know, not many, percentage-wise, very few people are really happy, satisfied in their marriages because they don't understand what the issues are or them. And that's part of the soul bonding among adults, is learning how to work through the process that brings people closer together. It's the unfinished business from childhood that makes marriages not work. And again, it can be reversed most of the time. I don't think it works every time, but for the most part, the process can be reversed. The healing can take place, and as couples, and of course, once you have a family based on closeness and intimacy and trust, then you can have, you go from the family level to the community level.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because I think that's one of the things that we're really overlooking and really missing. We tend to, these days, your parents get old, they become grandparents, and we shuffle them off to nursing homes. We shuffle them off to hospitals. We put them in. My mother and grandmother were drug addicts, and I had no idea. All I knew was that they went to the doctor every month, sometimes twice a month, and I had no idea that they were drug addicts until I took one of my grandmother's little red sleeping pills. Woo! Boy, that second off, Grandma, I thought you were just feeble. I thought that's why you were stumbling around. And but my grandmother and my grandfather were there when I was a child. My grandfather taught me to read. Sitting on his lap, he read comic books to me.
That's pretty much how I like to read too.
Yeah, I could read 1,000. I can read 1,000 words a minute, probably in the first grade. Was no problem.
I first learned to read at the age of 3, sitting on my father's lap. So I relate to that.
We didn't need the schools. I read every science fiction book in the Fort Worth Public Library before I was 14. And I've read everything since. But in my plan for Liberty Villages, it wasn't to separate the old folks over here and the young folks over here in a school. It was to put them together, to keep them together. Then the old people can have the old people, and I say that I don't even really realize that I'm the old folks now. I'm the grandfather. But
how old are you?
67.
67. Do you know how old I am?
No, sir.
I'm 75.
All right. You give me hope, Bob.
Yeah.
You give me hope.
As a youngster, I never thought I'd live this long, but I'm grateful that I am. I still feel like I have a lot of work to do to get a lot of things done while I'm still around.
Well, you do have a lot of work to do, and I need to be around people like you, people like Foster Gamble, people like Clyde Cleveland, because this is more than I can do by myself.
Oh, absolutely. No one can do it by themselves.
I've got ideas. I've got concept. And I study a lot. There's something in Oklahoma called the Oklahoma Food Co-op, and they're creating organic farmers from little home farms. They're growing their food, and then they go into the city. You meet once a week on the city to get your order, to get your food. We can cut out the trucking lines. We can cut out the corporate farms.
Sure. Tell me, whereabouts do you live?
Well, right now I'm between Corpus Christi and Houston, down on the coast.
Oh, okay.
But I live in a 37-foot fifth wheel, so the tires are new. And if I found a community I could work in, and work with people I could work with. I'd just move there. I'd like to do it out of Colorado because, again, like I said, I've been smoking pot for 45 years. The one drawback to that is that I'm too healthy to get medical marijuana.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
The reason I'm so healthy, it's because I've been smoking this for 45 years. I don't have cancer. I still got my appendix. I still got my tonsils. I don't get sick. And
yeah, that's great. It's interesting to me because my life has been one of being healthy like that most of my life. Well, most of my adult life since I became self-employed. Before that, I was sick a lot, but once I became self-employed, I never got sick, except in 2005 I had triple bypass heart surgery, which is pretty serious. And this year, I just got out of the hospital because my body is healing the grafts that saved my life in 2005, and one of those grafts is dead because the blood vessel that has come to life. So I'm going through a temporary period of having a weakened heart, and yet getting better at the same time, getting better than I was, and that's kind of weird. But
we've got a product up on my website that it's called the company's called Canaway, and it's they got a product that's made with the cannabinol out of the hemp plant, and it doesn't have THC in it. So it's legal in 50 states, but the hemp plant goes so deep, the roots go so deep that it pulls out the fulvic acid out of the ground that they've only been able to find in prehistoric plants because our soil has been so depleted. But the hemp plant goes deeper, and this fulvic acid heals cellular damage.
Can you send me a link about it? I'd like that.
Yeah, if you go to, I'll send you a link. I've got a whole article. I had a biochemist that made it for a product for me called Heritage and Health, and it had it contained all the trace minerals, colloidal trace minerals, and it contained the fulvic acid, and the fulvic acid is pretty incredible, and that's why cannabis heals cancer. Phoenix tears.
Yeah, I know it does because I've studied hemp oil, and there's several very authoritative websites that and YouTube videos that explain how hemp oil is made and what the benefits of it are, and it seems to be one more amazing during products. So it's something I'm interested in from that standpoint, and which, again, we're coming back around in a roundabout way to here we are in a society where such natural cures are not allowed because of these big corporate cartels.
Well, you can't heal yourself. You can't heal yourself of cancer, and the doctors don't make any money off people that are well.
Right. I don't think it's so much the doctors as it is the pharmaceutical companies. I think they're much more to blame than the doctors are for the state of our.
But the doctors work for them. The doctors work for them. That's how they.
Yeah, but they did. What I'm saying is they didn't always. When I was a kid, the doctors were independent. They come to your home to help you. They were really into it, and they've been taken over by what I can think of, the medical cartel, which is partnered with the pharmaceutical cartel. And I don't think the doctors today have almost no control over their own insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies that control the whole medical scene. Uh, I think those organizations are much more responsible for the degradation in medical care than the doctors are, who I think they're basically been relegated to mere employees of these bigger organizations.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
And but it's a matter of taking it back. Now, if I had my choice, what I would do is set up shop in Colorado. I would buy the marijuana from the people that know how to grow it, and I'd sell it to anybody that walked in the shop.
Okay, let me ask you a question. If you had the wherewithal to do that in the near future,
yes,
would that be something you would actually go out and do?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would. 45 years.
Let me tell you what I think would benefit you. I think you need to start a medical holomat from the ground, from scratch. And I don't think it would be very hard to do because there's a lot of doctors out there who would love to be in a holomatic environment, with partners, bosses.
I would love to do that. I've got doctors. I got a list of doctors. I got a list of people that know the pharmaceutical, that practice naturopathy, that know what plants to eat, what vitamins to eat. I've got droppers full of tinctures right now that I take on a daily basis. I've got vitamins that I can I take about 4 capsules a day. And I don't get any cramps. I don't have anything wrong with me.
That's wonderful, wonderful. What I hear you saying, indirectly, sort of, is you're ready. You're ready for this.
I am more than ready.
I have wanted to create a medical holomat for at least 25 years. I saw the possibility of it 25 years ago. And if you're really as motivated as you seem to be, why not? Let's do it.
Well, the plan I had for Liberty Villages, we could take 5 acres somewhere. We could grow in Colorado now. We can grow the pot there. We can grow the pot and you can't do this alone. So what I planned, there is a company in Colorado that makes yurts and teepees.
Oh, yeah.
For every 5 acres, we put up 10 teepees, and you rent them out. You put a restaurant and a gift shop and sell your marijuana right there in the shop. Now, if you come from Texas and you come into the shop, be glad to sell you the marijuana that you want. I'd be glad to give you the hemp oil, be glad to give you whatever you want made out of cannabis, world's most productive plant. Love to have the shirts and the clothes too. I mean, because our blue jeans.
I can see it all happening. You've got a great vision there.
And the yurt, you can put up a big yurt like a circus tent in the middle of it, and that's your restaurant. Organic food, hemp clothing. It's back to naturopathy. It's back, and your plan for the whole, that's great. I don't want to run the place. I can't run it all by myself. I want people around that care about their fellow man here. I didn't start the militias. I didn't start the militias to get power over someone else. I did it because I won't stand by and watch 17 children being murdered again by government jackbooted thugs. I won't watch that happen again.
Good.
And I want veterans to occupy one of these teepees that we're talking about here. Costs $500 for a teepee. Okay. I've got a little something called a juice box. That's a solar generator. You put it around the top of your teepee, and you got enough power for your computer. I could do the show from anywhere on the road because the juice box will fit on the back of my Harley. So I could do bike runs, I could do everything and tell people about the whole Liberty Village concept. And we could do it right there in Colorado. I could publish my books that I wrote 45 years ago, and here it is in real life, folks. Here it is happening.
Right.
It was science fiction when I wrote it 45 years ago, and it
Yeah.
was such a radical science fiction that no publisher had handled it. And here it is happening today. I was 45 years ahead of my time.
Yeah, well, some of us are burdened with being ahead of our time. I've always had that experience. But so let me make a suggestion here. I'm not sure when I'm going to be well enough to travel, but as soon as I am, I've got a gig lined up in Fairfield, Iowa. But if you've got a few friends together, uh, you know, I don't see any reason why we couldn't arrange to get together and your friends could learn this whole amount of stuff in a couple of days, over a weekend. You'd be set to go to get started.
Well, your book is offered, Flourish, is offered up on my website right now.
Oh, wonderful.
The links to your website are there. Copy of the book is up on my website. I believe in what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I believe it's an answer. And if we don't work together, then we'll all hang alone. It's the one thing because I've always been called the loner. It's my one drawback. Don't I don't depend on anybody else generally, and I don't go out of my way to work with anybody.
Well, let me say something to that, because I understand the advantages of it. I understand the feeling of independence that comes with it. And when it comes to changing the culture of the world, which is what we're talking about doing, it cannot be done alone. The other thing that I see, it took me a while to get this, because I was a lot like you around the independence issues. But I came to realize that there are things I want to do that I can't do alone. Just can't, because it's just not possible. Being humans, we have certain limitations, and one of the things that becomes a strength when you think about it deeply enough is the ability to go inside, to recognize a desire or a need, and then while staying connected with that feeling, you come out and share that with someone else. Now, some people are afraid to do that. A lot of people actually are afraid to do that because they might ask for something and get told no. Terrible, terrible. Well, it just goes back to our infancy again. When you're an infant and you don't get what you need, you're threatened with death. Not true for adults. So the ability to connect with someone else from a place of wanting or needing some support or something is a strength that a lot of people don't let themselves have, but it's available to everyone. And so I say to people who are super independent, maybe that doesn't always serve you best. Under some circumstances, you might be better off having people around that you can share with and lean on, and have them lean on you too. But you do things together, you get more done.
That was the rationale behind my Liberty Villages plan. Don't give me a teepee and a Harley outside, and I can pick up that juice box and take it with me. I can go to a motorcycle run. I can go to an event. I can set up a booth and power the whole thing. Power my cell phone. Power this Skype that I'm doing the show on. Right from wherever I'm at, and I want to go speak to 100 people and say, here's the answer. Now, today, you have become a part of my answer.
Wonderful.
This is how we work together. This is the plan. Here's your plan. This octagon setup.
Let me respond to something you just said.
Go ahead.
You called what I'm doing a plan. There are people, I don't know how many, there are people who are adverse to using the word plan because they think it means that the person with the plan wants everyone to do life the way they do. That's not what I'm doing here. As a group, the Titania Project provides tools. Okay, the workshops, the books, these are tools that people can choose to use or not, rather than, we've got the plan, come do our plan. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying we've got tools. Learn about them. Use them if they fit you. Don't use them if they don't.
All right.
Thinking of Ernie Hancock, for instance, he's a great guy. You know, he's the power behind Freedom's Phoenix.
Know Ernie well.
Which is okay. Well,
he's distributed my magazine for me before.
Yeah. He is someone who is averse to, revealing a plan. Okay, he looked at the Titania Project plan, he wanted nothing to do with it. Later on, he seemed to realize it's not a plan, it's a set of tools. It became, something more interesting to him. So, anyway, all I'm saying is, I don't want to present this project as a plan. I want to present it as a tool set where each of the workshops, each of the open meetings and so on, these are all tools that people get. And it's an open source system because our free presentations are just that, they're free. We want to introduce people to all of this technology, and then if they want to buy the tools, those are products that we actually sell, which are books and workshops.
All right, and I have, that's exactly what my magazine is. It's a tool.
Exactly.
It's a tool. It's not something I'm trying to force my ideas on. I've got all these different writers. You're one of them now, and here's the information. I want you to pay for the information because I need to buy gasoline. I need to buy food. I need to have a mobility to be able to go around and talk to people.
Sure.
And the juice box, the solar generator that'll fit on the back of my Harley, that's just another tool. That's part of the tools that we use.
That's wonderful.
And I've got the websites up here. I've got libertyvillages.org that'll be this will be featured in, and because it's a tool. Here is how we do it. I can't be in every place around the country, but I want to be able to go to a place what I envision anywhere around the country.
Right.
It's like a turnkey. It's like a turnkey. The Liberty Village concept is like a turnkey. Here's the people that make. Here's the people that make the teepees. Here's the people that make the yurts. If you want something a little bit more substantial, here's a concrete house. Here's where you can get the concrete for the house.
I love it. I'm excited, and I'm really glad that you and I have connected. I think that we're on the same track. We're facing the same direction, and I think there's a lot we can do together. So I hope we'll stay in close touch.
I absolutely will. It's called refining. It's one of the things, that I have really missed, having the people to bounce these concepts off, to communicate with, and to decide which direction do we want to go in. And, some of these people, Paul Pantone, I just put him up on Facebook. I put a film up about the energy generator, the free energy, and Paul Pantone is featured in that. I've known him for 25 years. I loaded his little Geet device in the back of my Bronco 25 years ago and went to gas stations and poured oil in the gas tank and let them watch it run.
That's wonderful.
So, Bob, I really appreciate you being on my show. I'd like to have you back on a fairly regular basis.
I'd like that too. Absolutely. Oh, and one other thing. Can you send me a recording of this conversation?
Absolutely, sir. All you got to do If you want to get it 5 minutes from now, you go to click on your name on freeamerican.com, and that'll take you to Blog Talk Radio, where it's being recorded right now.
Oh, great.
And you save it for your default player. Save it for your default player, and that will save it to your Windows Media or whatever as an MP3 file.
Okay.
It'll also be up on my Facebook, Free American 69. The video, you can see me doing the show on my YouTube video, which will be up on my Facebook site also. YouTube is Free American 69, Facebook's Free American 69, and my Skype's Free American 69. And no, that wasn't the year I was, that's not the year I graduated.
Okay, well, thank you so much. This has been a great pleasure.
All right. On my end, too, sir. It's,
all right.
And to me, by the way, you know, this is the 21st century. This is the way God works. Burning bushes are a little passé. God's alive and well, and he uses the internet.
Amen to that.
All right. God bless you. Bye-bye now.
Take care. Bye-bye.